Hi, it's Joey. Welcome back to my channel. It's been a little while. A lot has happened. I was starting to fall off because of uni assignments and I just started placement as well. If you didn't know, I'm studying teaching, so I'm going into primary school for the first time, which is really fun. But also my housemates, they're both moving out, so just a lot of changes happening within the house as well. It's not been the best of times in a way, but I've still done a lot of reading. Today I'm here to do a wrap up of all the things I've read so far in 2026. So it's 6 months worth of reading basically. I actually spontaneously challenged myself to do the magical readathon. Literally a week into the readathon, I saw someone's video and was like, you know what? I can totally add this to my plate. That'll totally be a good decision. It was a bit chaotic and I ended up listening to a lot of audiobooks just to kind of meet the prompts, which I don't feel great about. Like, I actually don't think that's how I want to participate. I think it's fun. I think I'd like to participate in the autumn equinox, the one that's happening later in the year, but I want to go in a bit more planned and like still read books that I actually want to read rather than like throwaways to read a prompt. It's nice that Basil is here. Do you want to say hi to the camera? Because my favorite character design at the moment is to like make Basil as a person. So that's kind of what I did for the magical readathon. I made a little character based on Basil and I decided that he would be a great Feywild cartographer. I think that's what it was. So that's the like career pathway I chose. And that's why I ended up having 7 prompts, reading prompts. And some of them were tricky. So I decided to kind of fudge my way around. Anyway, at the end of the video, I'll tell you like, I guess my final results. So the first 2 books I have to talk about, I guess technically in the romance category, is Heated Rivalry and Tough Guy by Rachel Reed, that's her name. So I read this because I watched the TV show and I loved the TV show. I ended up in this huge like rabbit hole watching like reaction videos and like analysis videos, and I even started to write like an essay. I don't know if I'll use it anywhere. I feel like the moment has gone, but safe to say I had a lot of feelings and thoughts and reactions to the TV show, and I decided to try listening to the audiobook. I have to say the audiobook was not for me. I have historically struggled with romance and smart audiobooks. It's not something I really reach for. The writing style and also the narrator made it worse, and also the fact that it was like gay sex. I'm not interested in listening to penises. I'm not interested in the penises. I don't know. So I might be better with sapphic smut. But anyway, all that to say, I know this is not my genre. In terms of like the story and the characters, I love the character dynamics. Obviously, I guess that's like the main thing. And I think the bones of that were in the book, and the TV show just felt a lot better. I think the TV show chose the best dialogue, delivered it much better because these actors are really fantastic. Same with the timeline. I thought it was really fun. I really loved the scale of it and the like time jumps. I think it really added to the tension and their whole dynamic. So that was cool, and I have to give respect to the book for having that element. But again, I just thought it delivered a little bit more in the TV show. So I gave the book 3 stars, and I think it was like still a fun addition considering how much I loved the TV show. But like, if I just read the book, it would just not be for me. I don't think I would have finished it. I did realize that in terms of romance tropes, there are a few things that really worked for me about Shane and Ilya. I am interested to take this forward as like data for what kind of romance tropes I might be interested in reading in books. I think the like 2 avoidant people learning to be vulnerable with each other and open up, I really enjoyed. And I think Shane being the type A kind of character and being neurodivergent, and paired with the more chaotic and maybe more risk-taking kind of character of Ilya. I did listen to Tough Guy, which is the next book in the series as well, which has characters that haven't been covered in the TV show. And this one disappointed me, just all the same reasons that the Heated Rivalry audiobook wouldn't work for me were also there, but I was less connected to the characters and I was way less interested in the smut. It had way less tension compared to Shane and Iliad. I'm interested to see what the show does with it. I think I have 100% faith in, what's the creator's name? Jacob Tierney. I really love his work, and I think it's really fun what Rachel has created as a starting point. But I'm not going to read the series, it's just not for me. Moving on to a very broad category of like literary contemporary classics. I randomly also listened to the audiobook of The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. The version I listened to is narrated by Simon Vance, and I thought it was really good. I read this actually for a book club that one of my friends started. It's really like an insight into Victorian society, the wealthy kind of elite society. It focuses on this man, a bachelor, a young man who wishes for himself to stay as young and beautiful as he is in the portrait in this current stage of his life, and the portrait to grow old in his place, I guess. I really liked the kind of theme or topic of materialism that it was exploring. We had really interesting conversations about that, but I have not retained any of it. But like I said, it was also just entertaining. I don't read a lot of classics, so I was a bit intimidated maybe to read it, but I thought this was very approachable, very easy to read, and it pulls you in. The audiobook was fantastic. I gave it 4 stars. I definitely would be keen to read more Oscar Wilde. I think I just like his sense of humor and his kind of satire and commentary. He does it really well. The tone really works for me. After this, I read another classic because I was just inspired. I really liked the vibes, and so I picked up Emma by Jane Austen, also on audiobook. She does social commentary and the sense of humor and the satire so well. I think Emma is a really fun character. She's so frustrating at times, but that's why she's so great. She's also still lovable. I just love how she gives you an insight into these characters, how they work, how they socialize. I wanted to rewatch the movie and I just couldn't wait until I got to the end of the book. So about 2/3 of the way through, I caved and I watched the movie, and I actually do think I prefer the movie as well. Specifically the recent one with Anya Taylor-Joy, is that her name? One thing that really stood out to me from both Emma and The Picture of Dorian Gray, but particularly in Emma, was seeing the kind of ridiculous, frivolous, kind of stifling way that British society and culture expected people to behave. They had to create this like self-importance and occupy themselves, but you can just see that because they're so wealthy, they don't have to do anything for themselves. So Emma's the first book that I read for Magical Readathon. I kind of just forced it into a prompt. There's a few parts of Magical Readathon that happened years ago that are part of your character setup, and I think technically in the rules you don't have to read the book to get the advantage, but for my chosen object, I ended up deciding I wanted a dagger, and that meant I had to read a standalone. So this was like a standalone book that I read to get my dagger. Now, moving on to more contemporary books. I read Chosen Family by Madeleine Gray. I used it for Spells and Incantations, which is currently on a bestseller list. It was on the readings bestsellers for 2025. I don't know, I just made it work because I was already reading this book. It's about these two girls, Nell and Eve, who meet in high school and they have a really close friendship. We kind of go through the many years and go back and forth a lot to figure out what happened in their relationship from high school and then through the university years and to this like current period where they had this chosen family that has clearly broken apart. So the themes are around queer friendships and romantic relationships and chosen family, and what are the blurry lines between all of those things, and what happens when you're trying to build a non-normative life. A lot of topics that I find really interesting. It's also set in Sydney, so I think the kind of metropolitan Australian queer scene was very relatable. I kind of feel mixed about it because I think there were a lot of cliches and there were moments that were funny. So I don't know, it was like a bit hit or miss. It didn't feel like it was super insightful or really cleverly done, but it definitely made me think. I found the childhood sections while they were in school quite painful to read, and I think that's because they did something really well. I wasn't completely satisfied with the like kind of mystery of what happened to them. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I'd be interested in what other people think about it, to be honest. I have a friend who enjoyed it, so I think it's like a good conversation book. It's a great book club book. The next book that I read, I listened to again on audiobook, which was Foster by Claire Keegan, and this was for Demonology, a book with a house on the front cover. So this is about a young girl in, I actually don't know what time period, but in rural Ireland. She's sent to live with her uncle and aunt, and you kind of get a picture of things that might not be going great for her in her family compared to a new life she kind of experiences. It's a very short novella, like Claire Keegan usually writes, and this one just didn't stick with me. I listened to it all in one go. I just don't have anything to say about it. I ended up not rating it because I felt like it was also kind of on me that I sort of rushed through it to get a prompt done for this readathon. Anyway, moving on to another book that also did not stick with me, which was Cold by Mariko Tamaki, again on audiobook, and it's like a YA kind of murder mystery. We have two points of view. There is a young boy who has been killed, and so it's his ghost kind of observing what is happening after, and then there's a girl who goes to a school nearby who sort of grows an interest in what happened to this boy. Characters are also queer, and that is kind of relevant to the plot. But yeah, I don't know, I guess I don't love YA writing in general. I wasn't really happy with how the plot ended up, and I just, yeah, I didn't think it was particularly good. But again, I rushed through it, wasn't really paying attention, so I don't feel fair like rating it. I read this book for elemental studies, which was read a book with a temperature word in the title. The final one I have in this category, I don't even know what category it really sits in, and I also haven't finished it, but I have been reading Grasshopper Jungle by Andrew Smith, and this is a reread for me. I'm like almost halfway through, not really. This was for alchemy, which was to reread a book, and I thought it would be really easy to get through, which it is. It's also young adult, and it's like set in a small town in the US, and the main character is having a bit of a sexuality crisis, has a girlfriend who he's really into, but he is also having weird feelings about his best friend who is gay. And then there is a kind of apocalyptic thing set off. It's very silly and crazy. I haven't gotten to the point where everything's going really out of hand, so like so far it is very set in this small town, like coming of age. You're in the head of the most teenage boy to teenage boy. He has so many questions, and he's horny all the time, and he I don't know, it's kind of interesting. He's like recording history, that's a thing that he does. I am enjoying it. I think it's interesting, to be honest. I think it is a very specific vibe. I don't think it would be for everyone. I don't know who I would recommend it to. I'll wait and see until I get to the end of the book. The year I read it in high school, I was like, this is a favorite, 5 stars. So I kind of wanted to see whether it holds up, and so far I think it has potential, but I will come back to you and let you know. Now moving on to fantasy, I read The Final Empire, which was the first Mistborn book by Brandon Sanderson. I don't have that one, but I do actually have the second book on me, so I might hold this up. This was fun. I enjoyed it. I really enjoy like a big epic fantasy world and series. I love sinking into it, getting a big cast of characters, getting the politics of the world and different parts of society. So I enjoyed it, the reading experience. And I enjoyed the book overall. I think I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. It was a bit slow and it took me a while to get into. I think the first like third of the book has a lot of exposition, and I didn't think it was done particularly well. And I also realized I don't really like fight scenes. I know I don't like fight scenes in books in fantasy. That is just a general thing. Usually I can just like skim it. I skim most fight scenes and action scenes, to be completely honest. But in this series, it is very specific to how like the magic system works. It's not just like using swords. So I just didn't really care about that. And I think because it was the first book, it felt like a lot of explaining how the magic works, and including how it works in like action sequences, and I just wasn't interested in that. the bit that interests me is the characters and the social dynamics. I think reading about like revolution in this book was also interesting. I feel like it kind of did what I want a fantasy book to do, but it didn't do anything exceptionally well. In contrast, the next fantasy I read was The Black Tides of Heaven by Neon Yang, and this is a novella. This was so good. Like, this gave me the real rush and feelings of, oh my god, I love it. I love the world, I love the plot and the characters and the writing, and I'm just invested in this. It's like a fantasy sci-fi world, kind of. I don't know if it classifies as steampunk. So there's a magic system to do with elements, I guess, and it centers on these twins, one of whom kind of gets visions and sort of gets set in this role as a prophet. So they're kind of tangled up in what is their role in the heart of this kind of empire, but then at the same time there is sort of rebellion happening from people who do not possess the same like magical powers and kind of subjugated by the state. They're developing technologies that would kind of rival the magic powers that are currently being really monopolized and used by the state and by the ruling class. That's like the broad world and politics, which we actually don't know that much about from this first book, but really the heart of the story is these twins and their relationship to each other, and as they figure out what their role is in this world. There's so much further for it to go, and there's so much development that I can already tell is going to happen. And I think there's 4 books in the series, and I think they span over like large amounts of time as well, so I'm just really excited to see where it goes. I really like the writing. It's nothing super special or super descriptive, but I think there was some beautiful prose and fit a lot in with the relatively short number of pages. I would be happy to have more, but I didn't feel like it was too short or too rushed at all. I love the general atmosphere and world, and I also love the characters. I gave it 4.5 stars. I would definitely recommend it, strongly recommend it, and I'm really excited to read all of it this year, hopefully. I did read this one for the readathon, and I used it for the prompt artificery, and you had to roll a dice to figure out what number of a series, and I rolled a 1. Next fantasy I had was The School for Good and Evil by Suman Chainani, and I listened to this on audiobook as well. This is a reread for me as well, and it was for animal studies, just to have a wolf on the character or in the book. It's young adult, and it follows these 2 young girls who every year 2 kids from their village get stolen away in the middle of the night, and they don't know where they go, but turns out they go to this kind of fairy tale-esque academy called the School for Good and Evil. Sophie is this beautiful blonde girl who really wants a fairy tale sort of princess story, and Agatha is her friend who's being dragged along. Sophie ends up being in the evil school and Agatha is in the good. I thought it was definitely fun at the start. It was actually kind of funny, some of the writing, like I was excited about it, but I just think the concept around good and evil, and a lot of it is around like gender roles, like what is externally seen as good and evil versus like what are the true values that they represent. But I just didn't think it was done super well. I actually thought it was done badly. I actually really didn't like where the story kind of ended up going, and the character arcs, I didn't think they really made sense. They were really frustrating. There was some kind of gross stuff. Like, I actually think that it reinforced some of the gender roles, and there was a lot of like fat shaming and stuff around people, like characters being ugly, and I don't know, I just think it could have been fun and still kind of an interesting critique on those ideas for a young adult audience, and I didn't think it was handled well. I saw the potential in it. I gave it 3 stars. I think there's a chance that the rest of the series builds on the world a little bit more and kind of makes it a little bit better, but I'm just not invested enough to continue. Finally, I have a book that's kind of feels like fantasy and sci-fi. I think on Storygraph it's classified as sci-fi, but this is another young adult audiobook I listened to, which is Skipshock by Caroline O'Donoghue. In this one, the main character, Margot, is transported to a different world that is based on like time. There is like a huge inequality between the worlds, where they have a really long day, the general quality of life is better, and so yeah, it's just kind of a higher value to live in a world with a long day versus a really short day where not a lot can kind of happen. It's a really interesting world. I don't think I did a very good job of explaining it. But basically she gets stuck in this world, and she's stuck on like a train navigating between these worlds, and she meets this traveling salesman called Moon, who realizes that there is more going on than first meets the eye, and that she has maybe a pivotal role to play. There is really interesting kind of world and politics happening, which I did enjoy. I especially liked how character focused it was. Everything was really through the lens of these people's experiences, and there's a lot of allegories for I guess like structural racism, colonization. There's a culture that's really based off of Romani culture. There's also a rebellion sort of happening. So yeah, I liked all of those elements. I'm not 100% sold on it though, and I haven't quite clarified my feelings, so I don't think it's like a critique. I guess in a way, because it is so focused through characters and their experiences, I guess the like broader society and history doesn't feel completely brought to life for me. And there's a romance between Margot and Moon, which I think is maybe more of a focus rather than just the politics. So they kind of have an equal focus, but really the heart of the story is Margot and Moon's relationship. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and it fits the prompt of astral plane. The prompt is to read a book set in a different world. So that brings us to the non-fiction I read. We have What My Bones Know, a memoir of healing from complex trauma by Stephanie Fu. I listened to the audiobook once again. I did a lot of audiobook listening. In this, the author tells the story of kind of her life and the childhood abuse that she experienced, and it's quite explicit and quite intense. It kind of explores her journey coming to terms with how it has impacted her, and this sort of diagnosis of complex trauma and what that means. And she also looks at the kind of Asian community and migrant community and the sort of generational trauma. The final section of the book actually includes sections from her therapy that she has done with her therapist. Personally, I found that part really interesting, and I think the whole way through she does like a real mix of educational side of things as well as like sharing just her personal experiences. This is definitely not for everyone. I think like you'd have to go in ready to have that kind of memoir that goes into all of those details. I think she's a good writer. I think she's not self-indulgent. She is genuinely very generous in sharing her story, and she's also quite thoughtful, and I really appreciated her kind of reflections and commentary, and I thought the kind of conclusions that she comes to felt poignant and resonated with me. I don't think it necessarily like stuck out to me. There weren't that many sections that I was really like felt like I wanted to bookmark and come back to, so I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I think it's cool that it exists, and I'm sure it is very meaningful for some people. Almost at the end, the next book I read was for shape-shifting. You have to flip a coin to decide how long your book was, and so I ended up with a book under 400 pages, and I chose Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde to fill that prompt. It has quite short essays. There's a few longer ones, but most of the essays in this are like 5 to 10 pages long, maybe more like 10 to 15. I actually am glad that I took my time with it. I don't think I would have gotten as much out of it if I rushed through it. I thought it was great. I really appreciate Audre Lorde and what she has to say. She's a beautiful writer, but just generally her ideas are so influential for my own thinking. I think this collection really gives an insight into the feminist movement throughout, I guess, the 70s and 80s, dealing with race and sexuality and class as well within the context of feminism. I think the ideas that really stuck with me was around The erotic, my favorite essay was Uses of the erotic as power. But I think I'll actually pull up a quote. It kind of explains it better than me trying to paraphrase. But from that essay, The Uses of the Erotic, she says, "We have been raised to fear the yes within ourselves, our deepest cravings. But once recognized, those which do not enhance our future lose their power and can be altered. The fear of our desires keeps them suspect and indiscriminately powerful, for to suppress any truth is to give it strength beyond endurance. The erotic is not a question only of what we do, it is a question of how acutely and fully we can feel in the doing." And it's kind of about the importance of feeling and intuition and our desires, and that they are just as important as intellect and analysis. I think the way she interrogates the kind of European patriarchal way of thinking and doing and being and existing, and she offers alternatives through this view of the erotic, but also like of poetry and art, and also of differences coming together across difference. I think the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house, and also the uses of anger, women responding to racism. I think they do a really good job of exploring how conflict and difference can be a really generative thing. Again, it's her whole lineage, and especially like indigenous lineages. I think there's a lot of shared viewpoints on how we see the world and how we understand ourselves and how we relate to each other. And that is just as important as any analysis. It all falls apart at relationships, no matter how good analysis or strategy might be. It's between a 4 or a 4.5 stars for me. That's kind of the end. I have like a final sort of cheat book that I also used just to fill a prompt, which was Public Power in the Age of Empire by Arundhati Roy. I took it from the collection My Seditious Heart, which I'm currently using to prop up my phone. Maybe I should just swap this around. My camera quality is terrible, so it doesn't really matter. But this is the book, and I am definitely not waiting until I read the entire book to like mark it as read. So I've decided that I'm going to like read a few essays at a time. Public Power in the Age of Empire. It is classified as a book on Storygraph, and I decided to use it to fill the prompt. Astronomy, which is a book from your top shelf. It could be physical or metaphorical, and I decided that that shelf right here is going to count. So that's where it usually belongs. I literally read this today, so I'm not going to say anything more about it. But I'm just gonna wrap up here, just in case you're curious. I don't know if anyone is invested in my journey with the magical readathon, but in summary, I had 7 prompts that I needed to fulfill, and I decided to swap one of those for 2 other prompts. So that gives me 8 books to complete the semester, to pass the semester. Plus, I had 2 extras to get my special object and access to the astral plane. But I read the Arundhati Roy essay after the month had ended, and I still haven't finished Grasshopper Jungle, so I'm 2 books short. But to be honest, I am proud of myself and I pushed myself, and I'm still going to finish this, which means I read 10 books in like just over 2 months. So personally, I'm happy with that, and I'm happy to just give myself the pass. I do really like a challenge, but I think what I would change in the future is I don't want to use audiobooks that I am only half interested in as like fillers. So I would like to plan ahead more and like find books that I really do want to read for my TBR. And if I had more time, I would have like borrowed them from my library or like try to find books and be a bit more creative about the prompts. I feel like it's been a mixed bag so far this year. I'm really happy with some of the books I've gotten onto. I'm really happy that I read The Black Tides of Heaven and also Audre Lorde, but a lot of things just kind of blended into one, and that's not really how I would like to read. Thank you so much for watching, and definitely leave your thoughts if you've read any of these books. Let me know what your favorite book you've read so far this year is. Keen to reconnect with you guys, and I hope you've enjoyed this messy little wrap up. Thank you for being here. I hope you're taking care of yourself and each other, and I'll see you in the next video.